Hello, friends, and welcome to Real Life Conversations for Christian Coaches. I'm your host, Teresa McCloy.
And I'm your co host, Erica Benson. We are so glad you're listening in. Here on the podcast, each week, we want to have real conversations to help you grow successful coaching businesses and yet still stay connected and grounded to what truly matters.
We share practical tools, honest stories, and our own experience as coaches, as well as invite some great guests on the show to support you as a coach to live from a place of rest, not rush.
So, whether you're just getting started or you've been coaching for years, you are in the right place. Let's dive into today's conversation.
Well, if you're listening in, you will know that we record pretty close to the time that the episodes release, usually about a week or two ahead, because I have a horrible cold. And so, my apologies for my voice this week. I came back from the holidays, actually, right before New Year's, and it just has been getting worse day by day. And here we are on January the 8th, 2026. And I am still fighting it. And that date will be important as we share some things with you later in this episode. But welcome back. And today we are going to share. Erica, by the way, it's great to have you back. You've been gone since before
Yes.
the holidays in some episodes that we've done. So I've flown solo a little bit here for a few weeks, but great to have you back after the holidays. And we're going to share with you a little bit about what's shifting and changing. We want to talk about the word change for us here on the podcast, and nothing negative. We feel like it's all very positive. The podcast started back in 2019. We've done the math several times because neither one of us are math people. Did we do it right? 7 years ago. Is that correct?
7 years today.
7 years today. So if you would go back to our very first episode on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in, you would get clear back to January 8th, 2019. I did not plan this. I just happened to look and go, wow. I looked at when the first episode and then I looked at today's date. It has evolved. And we've had episodes where we've talked about that evolution and all the things that it's done. So we're not going there today. But this really isn't about something ending at all. It's kind of about aligning to some new things. So we're going to dive into that today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, you can notice the growth, you can notice the maturity of our conversations along the way, the clearer that we've gotten, even as we refine this conversation to really be for Christian coaches. So we're so grateful to be on the journey with you, Christian coaches. And we want to just continue to affirm that change is a part of that healthy growth. We're always listening to our coaches, to others that we're working with, and we want to stay relevant and just present to the conversations that you're having and the things that are challenging you in your real life. So that's where we are today.
And before we move too much further, I think one of the greatest changes that I have loved is the last probably 14, 15 months has Erica, as you've joined me on the podcast, because I love having different voices. I am so much about a team. I always love working with the team. I love the back and forth, whether it's fun banter or information that comes from different personalities and different ways of seeing the world. So it has been fun for me as we've grown the podcast in this last 14 months or so together to hear your voice and to have your voice out there. You've been a part of the work that we do forever, since the beginning of time. No, not really, but you're too young for that. But you've been around since everything has been developed, the framework that we use, as we wrote the book, all the different things. So it's been fun. But change doesn't always mean you're leaving something behind. And I think that's just something for us to all notice and be aware of as you're listening in, that change isn't like, oh, I'm changing everything. I used to kind of have that mindset. Part of my personality is that I do that switch of, okay, I'm not doing that at all anymore. And you hear that definition, I'm moving everything to this. And that really came from an insecurity and a place of fear. I didn't want to fail at anything, so I'll just quit. And there's a difference between quitting and changing and shifting. So I think change sometimes means you're realigning and just putting, whether it's your values, your needs, what you see in your life as the areas you're focusing on in a different order.
Yeah, and so much of what you're talking about, Teresa, it's vulnerable and there's such truth to say. We talk about planting, pruning, and tending. So often when we go back after a season and we prune something, it is for the sake of the new growth that's coming. And so it doesn't mean, as you said, we're just completely cutting it off, but we're taking care of it and we're looking at how we can continue to produce good fruit from it. And so I love this idea that change
Yeah.
is really a part of good growth and
Yeah.
healthy growth.
And I talked about planting and pruning and tending, especially here as we are in the beginning of the year. And so as we share some of the shifts and changes that are happening here on the podcast, we discerned this, back November, early December, that this is where we were shifting. And it is a little bit of pruning, to be honest. And so change sometimes can be looked through that lens of what do I want to plant? What do I want to tend to? I think the important thing about those words that you just brought up too is knowing what your trellis is, right? Like, and
Mhm.
I shared that today on the workshop of the trellis is the being part. The, you know, Jesus is holding us. Jesus is that trellis, but yet they're the big rocks that are in your life, your relationships, your finances, your health, all of those things. We have these projects, these vines that are growing on that trellis, and we do need to plant, prune, and tend them. Us, one of those vines is the podcasts that we produce and the things that we put out. So, Erica, I'm curious though, as you think about with coaches, how does this affect the work that a coach might do when a coach might be discerning what do I need to change or prune or plant or tend as I come into a new season of coaching in 2026?
Yeah, well, there's always opportunities. I mean, the beginning of a new year is one of them. Sometimes a coach will receive a new certification or a credential. And so there's an opportunity kind of to reintroduce yourself and to reset and say, is the work that I'm doing actually reflective of who I want to be? We can get really comfortable. I just shared with our network yesterday from Isaiah 43, and it's talking about forgetting the former things. Don't dwell on the past. And because God is doing a new thing, and it's not because the past is bad, but I think there is a point to say, what have I gotten really comfortable in? As a
Mhm.
coach, when I'm showing up, what are the patterns of things that I'm maybe just checking the box in the coaching process and it sounds really routine because I want to do it right? And how can I be a little bit more creative? Maybe it's a conversation I'm having with a fellow coach. Maybe it's a book that I want to read or a class that I want to take that's going to expand my perspective again because we can get really narrow and comfortable in the work we're doing. We may not be growing to our full potential. So I think that's just something to notice is where's God inviting me to lay something down, even if it's a success? What
Yeah.
can I let go of? If it's a success, if it's a failure, if it's something I'm comfortable with, so I can continue to see the new thing he's doing.
Well, if I prune, I make room. There's more room for growth when I prune some things back. We've been talking a lot in our circle with our team, with our network of coaches of, it's okay to walk into 2024. I talked about it last week on the podcast with my word of quiet trust. Like it's okay to walk. We don't have to run in. And as you're walking, like, what do you want to sit down along the side of the road and make some room for some new things? You mentioned something though that I think is so good too. We tell our newly certified coaches, make sure that you share what new thing you're doing, what changes happened in you. Share it out. Use that as a reset in your business. So when you walk through a change, and if that change is a credential or certification, let the world know that you're changing and you're growing. Change is not always negative.
Mm.
Many times, change is a positive thing that we're changing and growing to. So, clarity for that and, just discerning all of those things. But let's share with you what, as a listener, what that change is for us. Surprisingly enough, after 7 years, I really felt last fall that it was time for the podcast to take another shift. It's not a big one. It's really just a shift to join together with our sister podcast. And we're calling it our sister podcast because it's all done by women. So Nothing against any of you men that are listening in, but that's what we're calling it. And we have a sister podcast called the Real Life Practice Podcast. And that podcast has always been done in seasons. Lindsay Sturkey and I, our spiritual formation director, Erica is our network director, helping our coaches. Lindsay is working in that formational space with the tool like our One Life Maps. And so we want both of those to be on a regular basis. That Real Life Practice podcast has been kind of seasonal. We would do 6 episodes around a practice in your being side of self, and then we would take a break. And so what we're going to do is both podcasts are going to live simultaneously every other week. So Real Life Conversations is coming out this week, and then you won't see it again for 2 weeks. Stay subscribed, all the things. You're just going to have a little bit longer to consume the content, be involved with that podcast. And then the week after, you'll hear the Real Life Practice podcast, and totally separate podcasts. You do need to subscribe to it as well. If you have not, just look up Real Life Practice Podcast or go to our website and you can find both of them and get subscribed to both of them. But Erica, I'd love for you to share, as we make this shift, what's the importance of the difference in the two and why content from the two is similar, but yet stands uniquely on its own in conversation?
Well, we are so much about doing whole life experiences. And so when we take the two podcasts separately and we say, oh, we're just going to focus on our skill set as coaches and what we're doing, it kind of keeps things compartmentalized. And we really believe that we're holistic beings that are serving clients who are whole beings, head, heart, body. And the being and the doing just go hand in hand. And so it's almost like breathing. I mean, we're kind of breathing out and we're going out into the world, and then we're going to take a breath in. And it's really a part of the rhythm of life to focus on doing and being, and living from rest, not rush, is what we all the time are talking about, just pace. And so I think it really honors that pace. And it's part of that normal everyday experience. I had a certified coach reach out just this week that said, I want to reconnect because I've been really heavy on the being. And there's no shame in that. It's a wonderful place. And I'm ready to connect with some of the doing. And I'm ready to show up again in my real workspace a little differently. So just bringing those two together and integrating them feels more holistic for us.
And we will talk about being things here on the podcast, because on this podcast, on this channel, Real Life Conversations, because we believe that's where good coaching, good helping professionals come from, especially, as a believer, we want to be connected to our being, but we want to give you a podcast. And that podcast has been out for about a year now. Lindsay and I restarted it actually from the One Life Maps podcast, brought it back to life. And we've really enjoyed focusing on a particular practice that you can have in your life as a coach. Actually, we just recorded this week, the episode that'll come out next week, and we're looking at the practice of slowing. What does it mean to slow down? Again, walk into 2026, not run into it with all your goals and all your stuff. And I've got my whole year. What would it mean to sit with God and slow a little bit? For us here in the Midwest, it's winter season. It's that time to slow down, come inside, grab a good blanket, grab a good book, and just be able to be with God. So we're going to be exploring that for 5-6 episodes every other week. And it'll give you space to sit with that practice. But then you'll also have this podcast, which will invite you into the work that you do and the discernment and the decisions and the forward energy, the doing energy that you might have when you create a rule of life, whether it's using the Real Life process, the tools that we have, or something else. You want both. And so it just felt, as I was discerning this move, very practical to me, kind of think in practical ways of, why wouldn't we just do each podcast every other week, being and doing hand in hand, giving you the content? But they are two separate podcasts. So you'll want to subscribe to both. You'll see similarities in the artwork and all the stuff if you haven't been listening to the practice podcast, and vice versa if you've been listening to practice and you're catching real life conversation. But we're super excited. I will say though, I want to give a little bit deeper, Erica, and you can speak to this as well. I have been doing this for 7 years, and there had been some seasons where I've hired help to do the podcast. For the most part, almost 6 out of the 7 years, I've done the production, I've done the editing, I've
Mm.
done the process of the behind the scenes. And you've helped me different times. Lindsay's helped me different times, some other people in our team. But for the most part, the weight of it has laid with me. And to do that every single week, it's been wonderful. It's been one of the greatest ways I've connected with you as listeners. You and I both will have conversations with people and we'll be like, how did you find us? How'd you connect? Well, I've heard the podcast or I listened to the podcast for a really long time. And I love that. And so I don't want to stop. You heard it earlier when I was talking, like I've been known in past behaviors, unhealthy places to just be like, well, I'll quit doing that. I'll do something. That wasn't where my heart was, but it was like, what's my capacity in this season of my life? I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago, 7 years ago. And so are you. And so what's our capacity to put out quality podcasts, not something that's rushed? And how do we do that well? And so I think I'm re-engaged and re-excited about doing it in this way.
Yeah, I think there's so much that you're sharing, Teresa, that does align with the practice of discernment and just listening, not just to what's needed of you, but also to pay attention to your capacity. And so that certainly transfers for any coach, listening to say, what is your capacity? And then how much can you trust God's timing of things and knowing that there are a lot of voices? And so this isn't about us doing more of we got to fill the voice, be the loudest, show up in your inbox the most times, but to actually settle and to be able to really produce something that's quality in both spaces and trust that it's enough and that, the urgency of that, the timing in between actually allows for growth and space. We
For
can walk
sure.
into this season with confidence.
Yeah. And you may be drawn to one podcast more than the other. We totally get that. But we just wanted you to know what happened to the weekly, things and where did it go and all of that. So we invite you in a couple of different ways. One is subscribe to both podcasts. That subscription part where you just hit, and I think it's now called follow on Apple. Not sure what it is on Spotify or some of the others, but just follow both podcasts. And they're going to be in your feed when you want to listen to them. You'll also see, if you're on our email list, every Wednesday, we put out an email called Real Life Resources. And in that email, we just want to provide you as a helping professional, whether that's coach, spiritual director, therapist, counselor, layperson in your church. We want to provide you resources. And one of those resources is the podcast. So it will be every Wednesday, one or the other of them. And you'll see it in that email as well. So subscribe to the podcast. If you're not on our list, you might want to go to our website and sign up for one of our free downloads so that you can get on our email list. You might want to join our free community, realliprocess.com/join, and it will take you into our free community that's actually off of the social media platforms. We kind of live in our own world over on a platform called Circle, and you can engage with us there. And if you are a coach that is like, I need a supportive community, check out our certification program. It is certification in our work and in the body of work that we have, which is our real life process, some assessments that we do, some different things that you could use. As Erica said earlier, sometimes you're getting something new. So check that out. You can find it at our website at realliprocess.com and the Get Certified tab. One day a month, we're going to be training and certifying. And then Erica steps in after that certification and walks with you through all of the other parts of being certified, from your coach training to your peer group sessions to other things around the content of creating and helping others create a rule of life process. So as we're shifting, growing as coaches, both of us, changing in our everyday lives, there's several things that have come around, the podcast being one of them. So we invite you to just follow along with us and check some of those things out.
Yeah, we are grateful for this space to share with you and also hear from you. And these conversations are important. We are in professional development spaces of our own where we're learning. And so we love being generous and sharing with you as we learn and sharpen our skills, not just in our doing, but also in our being as coaches. And we're just grateful to be on the journey with you.
We're on the journey as you are here at the beginning of 2026, discerning and looking at things. And it's okay. Just take a breath. Doesn't matter that it's January 8th and you are like, I already feel behind. I read something, Erica, and I know you've read it before too. Like the second Friday in January is called Quitter's Day
Mm.
because, people start something and then they quit. That doesn't have to be your story. Like, you don't have to buy into all that. I've got to have it all done and figured out. I often find that the whole month of January invites me into resetting and relooking at things. And I love tearing down all the Christmas and putting it away and having that clean space. So sit with the moments, as we always close the podcast, that every day really does hold an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. So we invite you to walk into that, find those moments, sit with them, sit with God in them, in the work that you're doing as a coach. And so we're grateful to be on the journey, as Erica said.
Blessings in the new year.